Wow. Welcome to Targeted, the show where we expose masculinity and success. And I'm your host, Atlas Altman, former military commander, director of special operations communications, and just all-around good guy. We are not a dying breed. We have a lot of ground to cover, from strength to writing to inner focus. You have what it takes, and I'm about to bring it out through these stories of the people that have already done it. Welcome. This is Targeted. I'm excited about this one. I am super excited. I think 2-3 weeks ago, we locked this in, and I was starting to just try to calm down with all the excitement and the questions I had running through my mind with this master of just so many worlds. So today I have a very, very, very special guest, Todd Stottlemyre. If you might have seen him multiple places, because he's been a champion in not just one professional environment, but like 5 that I can count on my hands. So what he's most known for, what I think he talks to a lot, is his baseball championships. But I want to go ahead and give him the mic. If you haven't heard of him, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and say anything you want about this whole thing that you've created. It's amazing. Please.
Well, first of all, let me just say what an honor and pleasure for me to be here. I want to say thank you for your service and thank you for your family. I know you're a family of service, and it means so much. And you know, if you go into my baseball life, it's like I got to play baseball and I got to live out my dream because of men and women like you. And without those freedoms, I wouldn't have been able to do what I was able to do. So first and foremost, let me just say thank you. Number 2 is you said mastered, and I'm like, man, I haven't mastered anything in my life. And I think it's the pursuit of it.
Yeah,
that makes it so fun. And I always tell people all the time, I said, you know, perfection, it's like, I mean, I come from the world where perfection is not possible, but it's the pursuit of dialing in and reaching capacity that is so much fun, which means that it doesn't matter how good today was or how bad today was. Tomorrow's a new day, and we got to get up, and the goal is to pursue to be best in the world at what you do. And if you can get up every single morning, doesn't matter what happened the day before, and that's the pursuit, all the great habits will follow the lead domino. And for me, that's my life. It's like, whether it's business, whether it's fatherhood, whether it's brotherhood, whether it's friendship, whether it's my spirituality, doesn't matter what circle of life I'm in, man, I'm just trying to show up the best I can and be the best I can. And I just know that, you know, with that goal in mind, it's like I'll always kind of check myself at the door, check the ego at the door, check the past at the door, and just become brand new all over again.
You know, with the humbleness, man, you are just so humble. Like, I get it. Like, the people who are always going after it and getting better and making things happen, they always say, hey, I'm not a master, I'm not the best. But you have the awards and the proof in the pudding, man. So I accept that mastery is maybe not the right word for it, but man, you're still getting after it.
Yeah.
And I just want to appreciate that. But I want to start like every boring person does, I guess, but this is going to be exciting. I want to start with your childhood, because I see a lot of men they're starting like at 18 thinking they haven't figured it out, and they're 18.
Yeah.
So like, the childhood forms a person. And I know you have a storied childhood. I've heard it a couple times, being on the sidelines of just some major champions and major legends in the world of baseball. Can you tell us about your childhood?
Yeah, first of all, you know, it's like interesting because, you know, I think that we believe in a lot of the same things, and that our environments do form us, and the people we're around, the messaging we hear. I have to tell you, though, like, as a little kid roaming the grounds of Yankee Stadium, where my father was a legendary pitcher for the Yankees, you know, he was back in the mid-'60s to mid-'70s, a 3-time 20-game winner, a 5-time All-Star, went on and coached after, became a 5-time world champion. And, you know, and then growing up in that atmosphere, in that environment, I had no idea until later on, when I kind of stood on the bank and let me reflect and look back. And it's like, Hey, there was times I stood in the outfield grass with Mickey Mantle. Yogi Berra was my dad's first manager. Monument Park was my monkey bars. Yankee Stadium was our playground.
Yeah.
Every home game, I put my Yankee uniform on and I went to work with my dad. And the game was different. We roamed the grounds, Monument Park, the infield, the outfield during batting practice, dugouts and clubhouses during games. I sat on Mrs. Babe Ruth's lap at Yankee Stadium, and it's like, it's crazy. And we used to go sit on her lap because she would buy us whatever we wanted, right? Awesome. So we would use Mrs. Babe Ruth, right? We would use her. It's like, we want ice cream, we want this. But, you know, when I look back on those times, you know, it was like going to the School of Champions, because these guys that were my dad's teammates were best in world.
Yes.
You know, and when you're around best in world, it doesn't matter what field it is. It can be medicine, it can be law, it can be military, it can be plumbing, it can be construction. But when you're around the best of the best, and you're around those people daily, they're pouring into you whether you want them to pour into you or not. And that, for me, that was training grounds for my dream. And my dream was very simple. I was like, my dad has the coolest job in the world. He wears a baseball uniform, he plays a game, and he calls that work. And I'm like, man, I want that job when I grow up. So that dream was instilled into me, you know, as a little kid roaming around, you know, as a punk, you know, a ballpark brat. But the environment of the possibility was also pouring into me, and I didn't know it. See, because my feeling and my thought was, everyone in our environment is playing Major League Baseball. Why can't I? So I didn't think about the percentages, the obstacles, the challenges. I said, that's what I'm going to do. So it was an incredible time. And I look back, it was like the perfect environment. I always tell people all the time, I go, look, maybe you didn't have that. And that's okay, but someone's got to break chains, man. That means you can still use childhood to climb mountains. You got to give it the right perspective, the right mindset, and then have the right mountain to climb. So
that's amazing. All right. You said so many great things there. I want to unpack a little. When did you realize that you were in a historic time and that a dream was really your reality?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. It wasn't until I was a senior year in high school. You know, up until then, it was about having fun, playing the game, working hard. I remember when I was like 15, 16, we were walking out of the stadium after American Legion baseball game, and my dad said to me and my brother, he said, "You guys have fun today?" And we're like, yeah. My dad said, "It didn't look like it."
Wow.
And I was like, I said the same thing. It was like, wow. I was like, "What do you mean?" He says, "Playing fun is playing the game hard. It's playing all out. It's being able to play the game the right way, playing it all out, knowing failure's a possibility, just getting after it." And I was like, man, my dad is never going to tell me ever again that I didn't give it everything I had and that I didn't have fun. And then my senior year, it was like, my brother was a year in front of me, so he'd gone on to college. Well, our team needed a pitcher. I was a middle infielder at the time, and my brother was a pitcher, but had moved on to college. And I said to the coach, I said, "Hey, coach, I can throw strikes. So if you're looking for a pitcher," I accidentally went 10-0.
Accidentally.
And it was like, wow, like this is it. So I went from middle infielder to thinking that I was going to go to college someday as a middle infielder, and then drafted and then play baseball. And then here I am, it's like pitching, and it's like I really found where my sweet spot was. And at that point, it was kind of like from that point on, it's like, I'm going all the way with this thing.
Okay. So your senior year was kind of the pivot point. Where you're like, yep, that dream's going to continue.
For sure.
And it started whenever you started pitching, huh?
Yeah, for sure.
And that mindset shift, did the word fun, did it become synonymous with work?
Yeah, you know what's funny? It was like, it's the fun was the mental and physical exhaustion after the game. It was the appreciation for the work.
So you're saying if you were exhausted, you had fun.
Yeah.
And your dad kind of planted that seed, but when you realized it in your senior year, you really realized it.
Yeah. So it was like physically and mentally and emotionally throwing it all on the game. I tell my kids today, I said, until you're willing to prepare with everything you've got in your might, and preparation is hard work.
It is.
Most people don't prepare because it's hard work, because it's labor intensive, because you got to actually think, and people don't like to think. So now we got to think, and we got to look at different situations, and we got to do a 360-degree view of what if this, what if that. And so I got to think, I got to strategize, I got to prepare. And until you're willing to do that with every ounce of your effort and then go act it out, which means I'm going to go play the game. Maybe it's in life. For me, it was in sport. To be able to say, hey, I'm going to give it everything I've got. I'm going to go all in on this moment.
Yeah.
Knowing failure is a possibility.
Yes.
But until you're willing to do that, you can't possibly discover your true greatness. It just won't show up. So, it's one of the messages that I got early on from my father, and that through compiling the years of study and reflection and looking back, it's like, I tell my son, he's a shortstop at Cal State Fullerton. He's a freshman. I said, son, unless you're willing to put it all out there, lay it all out, knowing you could possibly fail. You could look stupid. Your friends could say this. The coaches could say that. Man, you have got to go for it, son.
Yeah.
So it's cool.
That mindset shift is something a lot of people don't experience, though. There's something there. And what I hear often is it's because you were in this environment that you have that mindset. But I think you nailed it with the action. People always say, actions speak louder than words. But whenever you feel it and it clicks, it just feels right.
Yeah.
And it seems like you got that.
Yeah.
How long did that last? How long did that feeling last? Because it doesn't stay.
The feeling of
accomplishment and like I'm where I'm supposed to be. This is it.
What's funny is, my 15 years of Major League Baseball, I'm not even sure that I ever felt like, wow, this is it. I've arrived. This is like, man, because every day was like, I got to find a way to get better. I got to find the edge. I got to this. In 1989, my second year in Major League Baseball, they asked me to go develop a new pitch. And it's like, it doesn't seem like that big a deal, but you got to put it in the right perspective. Okay, so I'm one of 150 starting pitchers in the world.
Yeah.
And they're telling me I got to go develop new skill in order to perform at the highest level here.
Yeah.
So it's like the thought of arriving, okay, I've arrived, but arriving, but I look around and everyone is as good or better than me. or they've been there longer and they understand more. They have a better mindset. They're more under control. They have more understanding.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I got to go compete against all of that. So it was like never the comfort that, man, I've got this figured out.
Yeah.
I was never comfortable there. Now, there was a moment in time of arrival where I'm like, I'm good enough here.
Yeah.
And I think that early on, especially my first 2 years, they were sending me back and forth. And I remember my father saying, because I would struggle at the major league level. And then I would go, they'd send me down to AAA and I would dominate. And I didn't do that once. I did that 2 different times where they'd sent me back down from struggling and then I would dominate. And my father was like, whatever you're doing there, whatever you're thinking there, feeling there, whatever you feel about yourself there, go do that at the major league level. It's no different. They put their uniform on one leg at a time, Todd. Go do. And I remember when I finally got called back up in 1989, it was like, man, I realized at that moment that I was giving everyone else so much credit and putting them on such a pedestal that I couldn't compete against the pedestal.
Ooh.
And I thought to myself, man, I can compete at this level, and I'm going to go out and do exactly what my father said. You know, I have this belief, man, when we lack belief, it's like, who's pouring belief into us?
Right.
I needed to steal my father's belief at that moment.
Yeah.
I needed to steal what he believed in me so that I could try to believe in me. And I was like, I'm going to try it for one day. Right. And I went out and pitched a great game, and I was like, I've arrived. And then at that moment, I realized I could stay at that level. I could compete against these guys.
Yeah.
Now it was the pursuit. How good could I get?
It's
and I pursued best in the world. Yeah.
Yeah. So
the competition was my mirror.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you were looking at that. You were comparing yourself to others. Which I think a lot of people do that in social media nowadays.
Oh God, it's horrible.
It's really bad. Like
they're comparing themselves to someone who's lying.
Always
on social media.
Yeah, because
I always laugh. It's like the people standing in front of the mansion in the jet, and now I want to teach you a course on how to make millions next week. And I'm like, it's not your jet, it's not your home.
Yeah.
You're not making millions. Stop teaching the class. You're killing people. But hey, look, but there's some great. It's kind of like with everything, right? It's like if I got a counterfeit dollar right here, it doesn't make all money bad or counterfeit, right?
Yeah.
And the messaging, some of the messaging on social media is like so god awful and so bad and so toxic, right? And then there's points and places like people like you where I can get something from this guy on here. So now social media becomes important because without it, we wouldn't have met.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the people of value that are trying to put that value into the world that seem to come together, especially on professional networks like what we met on, where I see a lot of your experience going back and forth in the personal struggles that you just described. I see that on social media all the time in men in their 20s and 30s, and they're trying to get the jet. They're trying to rent the Ferrari to fake it until they make it.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you were ever trying to fake it until you make it? Or is that something that just didn't come to life whenever you were trying to compete with yourself at a level you knew you were going to dominate at?
Yeah, the hard thing about faking it till you make it is I was a starting pitcher. There's nowhere to hide.
Yeah.
So I'm standing in the middle of the diamond. Nothing happens until I let go of the ball.
That's right.
And so there's nowhere to hide. I remember a game early and I was pitching with the Blue Jays, and it was early in my career, 88 or 89. And they actually brought me in from the bullpen. And I got to tell you, the only out I got in the inning was a pass ball, and Julio Franco, we were playing the Rangers. He was on third base, and he'd go in to score, and Borders, my catcher, turns, flips it to me. I field the ball. I'm diving towards the plate.
Yeah.
And I get Julio Franco out. It's the only out I got in the inning. Tells you how bad my inning was. I gave up like 5 runs before they came and got me out of the game. And I remember I'm walking off the field, and I get almost to the top step of the dugout, and the guy behind the dugout in the front row is like, Stottlemyre, you stink. And I'm like, yeah, I know.
Okay.
Like I'm booing me too.
Yeah.
Like I know that was horrible. I'm going to get better though. You know, I'm going to get better. I'm going to go back to work. So
everyone has off days, but whenever you're comparing yourself and you're looking in the mirror, and behind you in that mirror is a lot of excellence.
Yeah.
Your expectation of yourself goes up in that mirror a lot. So the question, I'm going to reframe this question, because now we're talking about you as a professional athlete. It doesn't matter where you're playing. You're a professional athlete all the time.
Yeah.
And every play starts with you.
Yeah.
So people don't really get that. That level of stress is there every play.
Yeah.
So did you bring that home? Did you unpack that in the mirror? And did you look at yourself and say, listen, I got it. I'm booing myself, but what can I do?
So I had a rule, because early in my career, I not only took it home, I would carry it sometimes. And you pitch every 5th day. I would carry it right to the next start.
Yeah.
And I'm like, sometimes the next start wouldn't go well because I brought the baggage from the last start. And I brought the baggage of mindset. I brought the wrong emotions. And I brought frustration and overwhelm and anxiety and fear and self-doubt to the next game because I got my butt kicked last time. Mm-hmm. So early in my career, my personality was based on how I performed on the field. And it took a long time for me to end coaching and help and support to fix that piece. And then I would give myself, whether I pitched great and I was happy or proud of myself or whatever, or excited, or whether I got my butt kicked, I gave it until the next morning. And the next morning, when the sun comes up, I'm turning the page over because I have to get ready for the next start. So if I'm gonna feel sorry for myself, or I pitched poorly or this and that, hey, when the sun comes up, it's like boom, mindset. And it kind of goes back to what my dad would used to tell us is, hey, it doesn't matter how bad it gets. The sun's coming up tomorrow, son. Yes. Like, get up and greet it. And I would like times I wouldn't have to get up and greet it because I was up all night, right? And because I knew that when the sun came up, though, it was game time, I had to start preparing for the next one. So now the mess that I would carry sometimes for weeks or in bad runs or bad stretches for a month only lasted until the sun came up the next day. And when the sun came up, it was time to turn the page and start to prepare and get ready. Now I had to go into the mentality that I can dominate. Yes. And you had to go from, I just stunk it up, to talking yourself into, I'm going to dominate the next time out. Yeah. But the only thing I had in reflection was I just stunk. So it got to a point as my career expanded, it didn't matter whether I did well or it didn't matter if I did poorly. Tomorrow's a new day. You got to show up. You got to put that uniform on and you got to get after it again. And it's like, that's probably the single biggest lesson from sport that's helped me in business. Because in business, like sport, man, you have a lot of bad days. Yeah. And it's like, hey, okay, this is this moment, this hour, this meeting, this time, this thing. But the next morning, you better get up and go to work, baby, because it's time to go again. So, yeah, you only fail if you quit. Yeah, that's it. And that's so hard to do as a young person. I can imagine. So when I was in my 20s, I was full of piss and vinegar. Man, they would say, some of you are going to die. And I'd look around and be like, man, that sucks to be you. You know what I'm talking about? That's it, man. And like, I remember the first time where my life was threatened and the sirens were going off, the bombs were coming in. And I remember thinking this thought, and it probably happened to you a lot. What am I doing here? Why am I putting this much pressure on myself? Like the end could be near and I chose this. Why did I do that? It's amazing. And then I looked around and said, well, if one of these guys dies, what's going to happen? Not thinking about myself at all. I was always outward projecting like the bad things are going to happen to other people around me, but not to me. Yeah. And until I started like looking at myself and realizing that I have failures that are affecting other people, I didn't really start to hone in on what was important. And it sounds like you got that early. Yeah. That failure is not a bad thing mode, that mindset. That's something I hear from championship athletes a lot. Yeah. And so that struggle, like, do you ever feel like you're a failure? Man, yeah. So I had the battle of my life. It's crazy, but I was 15. My little brother was 11. And he was diagnosed with leukemia. And he was on his third bout. So he'd beat it twice. And the doctors were like, his only chance for long-term survival is a bone marrow transplant. So all the family members, we got our blood tested, and I was the perfect match. And it's very it's very different for me today because it's my greatest it's the greatest thing I've ever done in my life. Is I laid down and they injected needles into my body, 500 different times. They sucked all of the marrow out of me, put it into a bag, and then put it into my little brother's body. And it was like, anyone and everyone would do it for a family member or a friend or a loved one. And so I didn't feel like I was doing anything that anybody else wouldn't do. But that moment for me is like one of the greatest things I've ever done. And the problem is that my marrow put him into a coma. That coma then ultimately took his life. And I stood over his bed at 2:20 a.m. in the morning, and as a 15-year-old boy, thinking I just killed my little brother. And I had, our family was sad, we're devastated, and my mom and dad had to bury their 11-year-old son. But as I stood over that bed, I had, all the sadness that one would expect to have that just lost his little brother. But I had two other emotions that were driving and that had taken over my body, and that was hate and guilt. And, I had so much hate in me. I was like, I hated God, that how could you just take my little brother from me? And I had hate, and then I had guilt, and I was like, I'm the one. It was my marrow that killed him. And doctors came to my rescue, my parents, and these people, they came to my rescue, and as a 15-year-old boy, and it's like, man, you did everything you could do. This wasn't your fault. The chances, and you hear blah, 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 blah. The problem was I was a 15-year-old boy. I had a mind of my own. I had a belief system of my own. And all I could think about was, man, I just killed my little brother. And I want to tell you is that I didn't just say it. I didn't just think it. I felt it. And the problem with that is I repeated that emotion, that thought, that incident. I had repeated it so many times that it was 12 years later, after the 93 World Series, when I stared in the mirror and I couldn't stand the guy looking back at me, because the guy in the mirror murdered my little brother. And I was like, more than a decade later, I was still living that baggage. And every time something didn't go right on the field or right off the field, hate and guilt would show up, and I would destroy the current environment. And then I just got to a point where, here I am at the highest level. It's like, it's the craziest thing. It's like, I'm 6-7 years into my career, making millions of dollars. I'm 28 years old. I grew up in Yankee Stadium. I'm a 2-time world champion. And it's like, if you looked at me from the outside, you'd be like, man, this guy has got, he's got it all. He's got the Midas touch. What they didn't know was inside, man, I lived in a very dark place. I didn't love me. I didn't love anyone else. And competition would sometimes bring out the worst in me, or, the wrong conversation off the field would bring that guilt, those emotions. And I was like, man, I'm tired of landing in this place. I need help. And I reached out to a guy, his name is Harvey Dorfman. He wrote The Mental Game of Baseball. He was the mindset guru of Major League Baseball. And I reached out to him. I started working with him, and, he peeled me back, and he just kept peeling the layers back to get to that one incident. And he realized that I hadn't let it go. He realized I was carrying baggage. He realized that I was living in a place of darkness. And because of that, today, it's like, I know there are people listening right now that are walking around, or that might be listening to this, saying, man, maybe there's something they've been hanging on to for a long time. And that baggage that we're hanging on to from yesterday is destroying God's blessing for our life today, and we can't see it. So, and it becomes almost like a curse. It's like we're now blocking the blessing and the seed of greatness that we were born into by baggage, by crap, by something. And look, because I repeated it, and I repeated the thought, the emotion, the feel, because I repeated it so many times, it got buried into my subconscious, and I was no longer in control. Because what we know that's where all our habits lie. That's where all the repetition is. So we've developed today this thing called the championship statement.
Love it.
And
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, the championship statement is all about rewiring, right? It's about, we talked about not goals, but targets and dreams, aspirations. It's like, hey, what is it that we want, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to write these things down, and maybe I want to get in better shape, or I want to be a better husband, or I want to be a better father, or I want to spend more time with, it doesn't matter what it is. What do you want? So identify the wants. And then the championship statement is to now write it in present form as if it already exists.
Yeah.
Now that's the foundation of the championship statement.
Yeah, there's science to back that up, isn't it?
Yeah, and what's crazy, it's not about writing it once. I challenge people, will you write it every day to where it becomes memory, to where it becomes your thought every morning?
Programming.
So that I can think it, I can see it, I can feel that championship statement, I can feel it happen. And the same way I did something bad, I can now repeat something new and create new circuits and a new subconscious and new thoughts and new behaviors and new emotions. So I can go get new blessing.
I love that.
It's so powerful.
James Clear put it in his book, Atomic Habits, that you can replace your bad habits with good ones. And what you just described was replacing your bad thoughts with good ones, which you can do in the same format. It's the same science, the same neuroscience that allows you to reprogram your subconscious.
Yeah.
But the key thing that I found, and we do this too, is writing it down. You have to get it outside in order for it to become real. Because anything that exists in here isn't really, it's for you only.
Yeah.
And until you put it into the world and you birth it,
Yeah.
you can't start seeing the blessings that God
That's right.
asks for you. This is why prayer is so important.
Prayer, the power of
It's
spoken
just getting
word,
it out.
man. The power of spoken word is like, man, speak it. Please listen to yourself.
Yeah.
Say it. Listen, if you write down all those aspirations, all those dreams, all those things, if you write it down and then you read it out loud, how do you feel?
Yeah.
Right? Emotionally, man, I'm like, man, it's kind of like, and I think about it. I was like, if I write down, man, I'm in the best shape of my life and I'm living in optimal health.
Right.
I ain't got time to be sick.
Nope.
It's the spoken word, and it's like in hearing your voice.
Yeah.
And I would tell people, record yourself with the champion. Record yourself reading it and press play and rewind, play and rewind, play and rewind. And the same way I played and rewound a bad moment and became that person, you can do something good and also become it. It works exactly the same way.
That's such a powerful story in that, you took something personal and you made it something positive. You made it something extremely positive. And when you look to your left and your right and you see those people around you, they're taking their cues from you. And if you're the strong rock that everyone's looking at, like you said before, you're looking from the outside in and you're like, that guy has it all.
Yeah.
The inside is, everyone is different, man. You don't know. Everyone's got problems.
Yeah.
You don't know
That's
what's
right.
going on in there.
That's exactly right.
And so whether you're calling them prayers or affirmations or however you say it in your belief system, getting it out and seeing that is so important. That's powerful. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah,
Now,
man.
have you ever done videos? I heard there's some science behind recording yourself, like being excited during a video, like whenever you won like a major championship, and then you see the video play over and over again.
Yeah.
It changes your psyche, I've heard. Have you heard anything on
So
that?
it's so crazy. And look, I'm not the science guy and don't have all the proof and evidence, but I mean, what's so fascinating is when you look back and you say, man, I did that.
Yeah.
And now neuroscience is saying, hey, if you do this, you'll get this. And I'm like, man, I've done that. And I get so excited, and it kind of reaffirms like, hey, that was right.
Yeah.
And what's cool about when neuroscience comes and it intersects those thoughts with and those behaviors and back it by science, it's like it gets me so motivated to want to go teach it to someone. Because man, I live that deal.
Yep.
So for an example, you nailed something there, which was like look, lots of times you pitch bad games or you have bad, maybe a bad run or a bad stretch. Everyone goes into a slump.
Yep.
And a lot of times my way out of a slump was going into the video room and not looking for what was wrong on my videotapes. I would actually have the video guy put every pitch that I threw, I seen myself dominate and get someone out. So it can be a series of games.
Yeah.
But it's just watching myself over and over dominate, seeing the results. And if you watch that long enough, pretty soon you're like, man, I got this.
Oh man.
Like someone's going to pay the price
That's
for all that pain I've been through.
super powerful.
So
That's
cool.
amazingly powerful.
Yeah.
No one's teaching that.
It's kind of like, I always say, man, record your performance. Right. And then if you'll record your performance, there's multiple powers going on here. It's like you can look back and you're like, oh man, that sales call sucked. I wouldn't buy from me either.
Yeah.
What do I need to do? What do I need to fix? What word, what sentence, this and that? Or you get into a thing and you're recording your sales call. How about if you recorded them all and then you put every sale together to where you were dominating? And now I'm struggling making a sale and I can go back and listen to myself. I made it. I did it.
Yeah.
I achieved it. You're going to go back out and you start to believe in what you've just viewed and felt and seen. And it is so powerful.
That's amazing because people aren't really looking at that. They see it on social media. Everyone's got a perfect life on social media. They see like the replays of that. But when people post that, they're not going back and rewatching it, next week.
Yeah.
They're watching it to the day. They're watching their own post. I'll tell you that much. Yeah. But they're not watching it for what made that powerful, what made that successful, what made that magic happen. And whenever you're looking at play after play after play that works, you're programming yourself to be like, what do I need to do to be perfect?
Yeah,
exactly. To make myself better instead of what do I need to fix? You're looking at what can I make stronger that's already strong.
Yeah. Amen, bro.
That is so powerful.
Amen.
And no one's teaching that.
Yeah.
No one's
crazy.
teaching
It's like, the championship statement is the beginning of our process, right?
Yeah.
And it's free. We want to make it free for everyone.
Yeah.
We want to be able to and we're like, as we sit here, we're putting the guide together. Cause I realize hey, if I say it, it sounds so simple, but now people got to sit and they're like, geez, they start thinking, I was like, what do I want?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, and they might say, hey, I want to get in the best shape of my life. I said, okay, right. I want to get in the best shape. And now the beginning of your championship statement is that one sentence that says, I'm so happy and grateful now that I'm in the best shape of my life.
Yeah.
And it's like, and if you start if you play, rewind, by the way, it's like, you won't drive past the gym without going in.
Yeah.
Because I'm focused on it. That's the thought I have.
Yes.
That the things that I have to do. So we're changing perception and focus and this whole thing. But the beauty of it all is I also realize I've had great coaches in my life. I've had great mentors. I've had men pour into me, man.
Yeah.
And it's like and it was for me. And I think about it, I'm like, I've had so many people pour into me for me.
Let me dig in on that because people are going to hear that and be like, well, it's because of your environment. But let me ask you this one question. Did you ever tell somebody, no, I know what I'm talking about? Did you ever say, no, I don't want your advice?
No, man. It's like, it's crazy.
No. You ever shut anybody down that was like, hey, let me help you?
Yeah, it's look.
It's almost, I'm sorry I'm asking these questions, but people are going to hear this and they're going to be like, well, that's because of where you were.
Yeah, but
no, you have to be open.
Yeah, man.
You have to be ready.
How many times, it's kind of like, the coach, the mentor, they'll say to the student says, yeah, I know. Like, bro, if you know, then do it.
Why are you here?
Why
aren't you doing it?
Let me help you.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like, you might say, yeah, I know, like I've heard that before. Yeah, but you don't understand it yet.
Yes.
Because we haven't done it yet. That's a
Yes.
whole new level.
It
Look, I
is.
can read a book and say, man, I understand that book. I understand where the author is coming from. I understand the author's perspective. Man, until I go put one foot in front of the other and go try that sentence, that paragraph, I haven't learned crap, man.
Yeah.
I just know the author's perspective and understanding of it, but it's about going and applying and putting it in my life.
It's yours.
And it's kind of like, that's the thing about behind the championship statement, is this thing I call inner circle. And it's why we're so proud of it, is because, you know, one of the things and that, you know, it's like, you know, I don't think like, hey, look what I've done, but based on the things that I have done, or the things that are the people that have poured into me.
Right.
You know, I have 5 beautiful kids, and I tell them all the time, I'm like, man, get everything you can from me, stand on my head, please use it for a trampoline for the success in your life. But not just about monetary success, but who you're going to become. And I tell my kids, I want you to become 10 times more than whatever I became in my life. And I want you to earn 10 times. I want you to become successful. I want all of these things, which is why we created the inner circle, because the inner circle is an opportunity for me to go on and take all of yesterday and today and provide it and give it to people to support their championship statement, to help them climb the mountain. And the beautiful thing about it is, for $3.33 a day, less than Starbucks coffee.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to go live. I go live twice a month.
Yeah.
One's a teaching. And then 2 weeks later is Q&A and accountability. And that's coaching.
That's huge.
Teaching is, let me instruct you
Yeah.
on what the last. Coaching is, are we doing it, baby?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want people to get into the inner circle for entertainment. Like, let's if we're gonna be here, you know, let's do something. I used to say in playoffs or playoff games, I said, well, if we got to be here, let's win.
Yeah.
I'm like, I mean, we're here.
Yeah.
Well, let's go do our jobs, man.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, it's kind of like, and I love, and I'm so passionate about, you know, like I said, I call it the inner circle, but you know, at the end of the day, it's supporting that dream, because we know, and we talked earlier, how many people New Year's resolution or make a goal, and anywhere from 5 minutes from that point that they made it to about 5 days, they've already moved away from it. They've already walked away.
We've become so short-minded with social media. Most people can't remember the post that they looked at yesterday, but they can remember the movie that they watched last time. So it's the long-lasting impacts, like you say. A championship statement's going to stick with you, but the circle that comes along with it is going to make you a better person. And I love that you're doing that. And what a great price too, to have a coach like you with so many wins, transition into multiple different areas and still win. To be able to tap into that, it's amazing. And they would have that. Let me ask a question, because I asked my network, my circle. I said, if you had a question, what would it be? And I got one from Mike. Actually, I got one from Travis. This kind of goes right in.
I'm afraid of your network, man, because those are high performers.
Yeah. No. So Travis Lewis he's getting ready to transition into another world. And he said, your experience, both the highs of the successful baseball career that you had and the challenges that you may be facing in transitioning into the business world, but still being successful. So what mental or physical habits from your time and all of that were critical to your time in being a successful entrepreneur and athlete? And were there any parallels between the two?
Yeah. So the never arriving mindset.
Never arriving. Yeah.
So I got to be the student.
Yeah.
So in my transition, you know, from sport to business, new coaches, I'm going to have new coaches. I'm going to have new mentors. And I had to, when I walked away from the game, I always talk about dropping the bags. Well, I had to drop the trophies.
Yeah.
I had to drop the world championship rings. I had to drop all of the fortune and fame and all the stuff that came with it.
Yeah.
And I had to humble myself and start over as the rookie again. and then I had to go be willing to start at the bottom and climb the next mountain. And I couldn't go into my next career because I did that. I deserve this. This is hard.
That's bad.
This is going to be really hard, especially for high achievers, to leave one field, then to go into another field with having those internal expectations. Yeah, but I've won. I've done this, so I deserve this. No. Unfortunately, I had to put myself in a place. I start at the bottom. I got to be the student. I got to learn. I got to go through the exact same process in this field to get to the top that the people at the top in this field, I have to go through what they had to go through.
Yeah.
And I have to be willing to start over and go through the struggle.
No shortcuts.
And it's no shortcuts. I'm not saying it's always going to be fun.
Yeah.
But that's what we got to do. So, and the beauty of it is, you can take that frame into every day now. New day, I got to start over.
Yeah.
Yesterday's success doesn't matter. Yesterday's failures and baggage and crap and conversation, they don't matter. I got to start over. I'm starting fresh. So what I'm saying is, the transition is the willingness to drop the ego based on what I've already done and be willing to start over at the very bottom. Not easy. Worth it,
but mandatory.
Man, it's fun.
That's so good
to go through the grind again.
Yeah,
it's crazy. I look back on my baseball career, my minor league days, and my college days, was fun, baby.
Yeah,
it's like the major league days. Like, you better win.
Yeah, that's it.
Or you're gone here. So it's different. So
I totally see that. Well, that brings me into my next question. I usually end the show in like, what would you do if you could change things? And this is kind of a question that leans in that way. And it's it's from Mike Barnum. Big fan of your whole family, including your dad. He used to just watch all of you guys. And he's he's a self-proclaimed Yankee fan. Sorry, not sorry. End quote. That's what he says. He'd like to know, what's your proudest moment? That's one part. And then the second one is failure as an inevitable part of working at a high level. How do you deal with failure and then, navigate being operationally sound at that highest level?
Let me do failure last.
Let's do failure last.
Okay.
Proudest moment.
It's funny because it's like, it's one of my favorite subjects today. Not always, but today. One of the moments that, and this will be fitting because it sounds like Mike was a fan of my dad's and a fan of the Yankees, and so let me kind of relate to bring the whole family back to one setting, and it's the coolest moment outside of winning world championships.
Yeah.
It was the coolest individual moment I've ever had in my life wearing a baseball uniform.
Okay.
I'm with the Diamondbacks. We're traveling into Philadelphia. I have a hole in my rotator cuff. I have a torn labrum and bicep tendon. I tore it away from the bone.
And you were in pain.
Yeah. 3 months earlier, I had all of the medical professionals and orthopedics tell me around the country, because I visited a bunch. Dr. Zeman right here in town was my lead doctor. And he told me, he said, look, I don't think I can fix you and you can come back and pitch again, but I want you to test that theory and go visit the country. So I went on tour, visiting one orthopedic surgeon after another. And everyone that looked at my MRI was like, Todd, you've had a great career. And I was like, wow, it's not what I'm not getting the answer I want to hear.
Yeah.
And I get back and I say to Dr. Zeman, I said, everyone says the same thing. What can I do now? He says, well, we can rebuild your body, rebuild your mechanics, and we can see how far it can take you. He says, you need to go into the weight room and train like you're an Olympic athlete, not like a pitcher. So I need you to do everything that you're not used to doing. You're going to have to start all over. And it's like, man, I went in there and I would work day and night. And I did this for 3 months and I rebuilt my delivery and everything to try to protect my arm, use more core, more legs, more of this. And it's like, and I put this whole thing, and it's like, I got that season where they thought my career was over in 1999. 3 months later, I'm pitching in a major league game again.
Wow.
And I was like, I put it in my mind. And I remember telling Dr. Zeman, I said, I'm not only going to pitch again, I'm pitching again this year.
Yeah.
And he kind of looked at me like, okay, right? But I made the decision. I was just, so now later in the year, or a year later from that, as we make it through, a year later, we're traveling and I'm still pitching. Yeah. I'm still all torn up, haven't fixed it. Because I don't want to fix it because they say I will never make a comeback. So I just kept going. And then the next year, my first start, I pitched 8 innings and I got a burning sensation in my elbow and the ulnar nerve had sublexed out. And I show the doctor and he looks at it. He's like, man, you need surgery. I'm like, bro, I can't get surgery. Yeah. I can't shut down everything I've built. Yeah. I'll never build it back. I won't get it back and I won't be able to come back. So I just pitched with it. So we travel into Philadelphia, get to the story. My dad's with the Yankees at the time. He's the pitching coach. They got the day off. My mom and my dad, they go to Philadelphia, drive to Philadelphia. It's the first and only time I ever put my father on the guest list to get tickets.
Yeah, okay.
That's the only time because he was always on a field. Or
Yeah.
I was on a field. So it's the first time he'd ever come and sat in the stands to watch me perform.
Wow.
Now, he might have been in the dugout before where we compete against one another, but never in the stand. So I remember I wrote the guest tickets in, Mel Stottlemyre, 2 tickets. Traveling secretary comes to me and goes, is this a joke? I said, no, the Yankees are off. My dad came. He says, okay, good enough. We're going to put him right next to the dugout. I said, great, man, that's awesome. My first time up, we're in Philadelphia. I go to the plate, back when pitchers hit.
Yeah.
Fastball up and away, swing, ball goes out of the ballpark.
Oh,
I hit the only home run I've ever hit in my major league career to the only game I ever had my dad as a sitting in as a guest.
As a guest.
Now, what's crazy, I don't pitch that good, but good enough to win, hit the home run, this whole thing. They then escort, I come out of the game after a 5th or 6th inning or whatever it was. Yeah. They then escort my dad down to the tunnel, my mom and dad.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like me in my uniform, my mom and dad in the tunnel underneath the stadium, and the game's going on. My dad looks at me. It was like a Mean Joe Green commercial, you know. My dad looks at me and he says, I got one question for you. How in the world are you doing it? And I looked at my dad. I said, I got one question for you, Pops. I said, how you doing it? You see, at that time when my dad did a mound visit with his Yankee jacket on, he wore the jacket because underneath was a chemo bag.
Yep.
That was being piped into his veins because he was fighting multiple myeloma. And I thought, man, if my dad can struggle for his life, where his life is in jeopardy, but yet he at that same time can go pour into Yankee pitchers and to be the best version of himself, to help them be the best versions of themselves, I can throw a pitch in pain, man. And if all I got to do is throw 100, 110, 120 pitches, and I got to go through 110, 120 pain points, and then I'm going to be good for 5 more days, and my dad's got to go through it every hour of his life, fighting for his life. I'm like, hell, man, I can pitch in pain.
Yeah.
If he can go do that, I can go. So he was inspired me in my comeback, to make my comeback, to pitch in pain, and to go through everything that I went through on the field to close out my career, to where I was like, man, it's like, if he can do it, I can do it. So
that's a crazy.
That, for me as an individual, I look back on that and I was like, man, no, it's unforgettable for me. You know, it's like, I'll always remember that moment and that time. So it was cool.
That's huge.
Yeah, man, it was cool.
That's huge. All right, last question on the failure. Yeah.
Failure, no one wants to fail. Like, you know, our DNA is like, we want to be comfortable.
Yeah.
Like, failing sucks, right? It's uncomfortable. We want to be comfortable. Sometimes we don't take an action because we're afraid of failure. Now fear is also in the word.
Yeah.
So now I got fear and possible failure. And yet, as a human, I want to be comfortable. So, man, how am I going to take an action? It's like, it's understanding and giving failure a whole nother perspective. And over time, I've given failure a whole new perspective. Failure is my teacher. It's the professor.
Yeah.
See, when I fail, the teacher is telling me what I did wrong. And the beauty of the failure is it's the opportunity to get better. So let me close with saying that if you do not want to fail, really what you're saying is, I do not want to succeed. If you're saying, I don't want to fail, I don't want to be the best version I can be. If I don't want to fail, then I want to ignore the seed of greatness that God put in me that I'm supposed to go out and achieve. So now let's talk about failure. Like, baby, now let's bring it on. Because if I want to bring it on, then that failure, that moment says, hey, I gotta do a little left here, a little right there. Let me go take the new action and let me go push myself to what? To the next failure. So where failure was at one time so uncomfortable and so miserable and this and that, now I'm telling you, man, push to it. Man, when I go to the gym, I'm not doing a set of 10. It's like, oh, I'm going to go do 3 sets of 10. No, I'm not. I'm not doing 3 sets of 10. I'm doing 1 set of 10 and my other 2 sets, I'm not stopping until I fail. Yeah. Because that's where what? Yeah. That's where the growth is. Now think about it. If that's where the growth is, tell me why you can't get so freaking excited about failure. Yeah. Because it's the opportunity to grow, to get better, to become more, to pursue mastery, to become better, to pursue best in the world.
Yes.
Man, you ain't doing it without failing your face off. So let's go fail.
You can't have a championship statement without failure being the expectation.
That's it, brother.
I love it. Todd, I got so many more questions, but we're running out of time. I just want to say thank you very much for coming down to the studio today, sharing your story, but your lessons and all of the things that you've shared with the audience today. I know I'm going to get crazy awesome comments off of this one. And there's a lot of motivation in you. So thanks for bringing that to the studio.
Well, let's do it again. I'm going to, at some point, I'm going to get off my butt. I'm going to launch a podcast.
You got to do it.
I got to have you as my guest.
I love it.
Because I'm sitting on this side of the table thinking, Todd, shut your mouth and stop talking and start listening. We were talking before and I looked over at Camden and we're like, man, we're so excited to be here. Like, I want to learn from you. Yeah. I want to hear about your life, your experiences. What can I get today that I can go try? I can go attempt. I can go move. Yeah. I want to develop my mindset. So, brother, it was like, what an honor. And we'd love to reciprocate. And when I get this podcast launched, I'd love to have you on.
I told you before the show, podcasts are the new books. This is how people are earning right now.
Yeah,
so
amen.
Your podcast would be phenomenal. And I know AD would love to host you here in the studio if you want to try it out.
Yeah, man.
This is a great studio location. Awesome. Close to the airport in Phoenix.
There you go.
I always love coming to Rockets AZ Studios, and they got a fantastic setup as you can see. So
yeah, man, it's great.
Thanks again for having the time for us.
Yes, sir.
And I can't wait to see how this changes the world.
Thank you for all your service. Appreciate you.
All right. Until next time. And that was Todd Stottlemyre. Stay with us as we stay on target with another awesome episode coming up next.
We'll see you there.
As an ambassador to Bucked Up, I get to give you a special discount as a listener, so you can stay on target with code ATLAS25. ATLAS25.